Okay, moving on. Like I said, we got a lot to go through, and there's probably going to be more than one, several parts. Next one is a cartoon. I remember seeing this, I think it was about 8 years old, 6, 7, 8 years old, around that time. Made by Don Bluth, called The Secret of Nim. I haven't watched this DVD too much. I bought it brand new back in 2002, and they've since come out with different versions of this. But I just remember I had a hard time getting through it, I think, the last time I watched it, because it's just, I don't know, matter if I've changed or anything like that. I just thought it wasn't the same. But I still keep the DVD around. Next one is The Sandlot. I remember seeing this when it first came out. We rented this one quite a bit. And funny movie. I think it had something. I forget what it was. There was a string of movies throughout the 90s where they had to make all these sports movies. And definitely 20th Century Fox was still riding on the success of Home Alone. And so they were producing all these family comedies at the time, and this is just fun to watch. It was, for the whole entire family to watch. Had Dennis Leary in it. Of course, the famous lines out of this is, "You're killing me, Smalls." Come on. The forever and the beast. You find out it's just a giant, of course it is a giant dog, but it's a friendly dog. Next one, I think I was in first grade when this came out, and this is another one that kind of shocked me. It's The Rocketeer. I remember renting this one quite a bit too, but this one I remember I taped it off TV also, but I didn't, because once I taped it off TV, I didn't rent it much. And of course, with TV, they take stuff out that they can't air, or they clean it up a little bit for a family viewing. Of course, ABC played it, and for like a family movie of the week, and Disney's The Rocketeer. Well, when it came out, and of course, it was a bomb, but actually, yeah, it was a bomb at the time. I didn't think it would be, or it was. I thought it was a hit, but I found out it was a bomb. It was, I don't want to say it. It was, but I really enjoyed this when it came out, and I still do. It is basically it's like an Indiana Jones style of movie. But what I was really shocked about was that this is, again, a Disney movie, and some of the content that was in it, like The Three Musketeers. This one, not so much. Well, there was some violence in it, but there was also quite a few words that you wouldn't normally hear, some profanity that you wouldn't normally hear in a Disney movie. Phrases like SOB, and of course, the D word was used quite a bit. Damn was used quite a bit. And, that was typical throughout a Disney movie. That wasn't uncommon even at that time. But, this had a little bit more stronger words. And I found out that when the movie was in post, this still got a PG rating. But Disney was contemplating at the time whether it was to be on their Touchstone Pictures label or Walt Disney, because it still had, they thought it was too family friendly for Touchstone, and they thought it was too hardcore for Disney, but it ended up being considered Disney. But it's got Timothy Dalton, Billy Campbell, and Jennifer Connelly. Yeah. And the movie was directed by Joe Johnston, who just came off of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And, yeah, there we go, The Rocketeer. I know I'm a geek for keeping that one. Next one. This is one, the reason why this cover's a little off. I guess I'm too cheap to go out and buy the DVD. What I did was I had this on tape, and with some software I had, just transferred it onto DVD directly from the VHS tape. But this is one of the earliest movies I ever owned. It's, of course, Walt Disney's Robin Hood. And I enjoyed this, like, yeah, I was obsessed with this for some reason. That and The Jungle Book in first grade. And it was always those two that I really had to watch over and over again. I don't have The Jungle Book. I wish I did. Next one is the biblical epics I have. We have The Robe with Richard Burton, Gene Simmons, and Victor Mature. I ended up, this one came to me by kind of mistake, but I remember taping it off TV, and I couldn't really get it at the time, but then years later I eventually did. Because I became, fully understanding what this was about, and it's a fictitious story about a Roman centurion who ends up putting Christ on the cross, and he ends up feeling, because of his robe, he wins the robe in a gambling game, and he ends up feeling the pressures of sin like never before. Actually, he never felt it before, and he ends up he thinks that he's being cursed, and he's not. It's his own shame and sin that's convicted him. And good thing about this DVD is it's presented in the original CinemaScope format. That's the best part about this DVD. Because the first time I saw it was panned and scanned like crazy, and it was on the Family Channel. Next one is a Christmas movie, Prancer. Now, I remember when this first came out because we had a heck of a time trying to get it on the video store. Of course, we weren't into buying movies then. It's much more easier to buy movies now than it is, than it was to back on VHS. And we scrambled. We kept calling up our local video store just to get a copy of this when it came out on VHS. And the phrase, the third time is the charm. Yeah, and of course now they play this movie on television every Christmas. It seems like somebody's playing it, like Hallmark or somebody like that. And this is a movie that was a real joy to watch, and this also kind of fit into that post-E.T. thing that it had. Of course, it had the cute and cuddly creature, and who's got magical powers. Of course, it's Prancer of Santa's Sleigh. And in case you never seen this story, the story is that somehow it's the story about this little girl, and she's just lost her mother, and her family's trying to cope with it. That her father, played by Sam Elliott, he's kind of cold to her, and it's Christmas time, the only comfort that she really finds is through this magical deer. The deer shows up mysteriously one night, and of course it may have something to do with when there's something involved with the town decorations, like the town is hanging Santa's sleigh and his 8 tiny reindeer. Well, one of them falls off, and it's Prancer, and of course it's a wooden light, and she ends up running into what she believes is the real Prancer. Turns out it is the real Prancer, and she ends up saving his life. And of course, her family goes through all these other changes to that. Essentially, the deer brings them back together as she nurses the deer back to health because he ends up getting shot in the leg. And rather than her cold-hearted father, rather putting an end to it, ending the deer out of his misery, she takes him in and she nurses him back to health. And eventually, in the long run, not in the long run, but later on, she ends up getting hurt trying to set him free. Then the deer ends up protecting her. And good, fantasy and heartwarming story. And of course, I could spoil it for you, but what the heck is that? She ends up taking Prancer over to this one particular cliff, and he flies off and joins Santa's sleigh. Next movie I saw in 1993 in the theater. It came out for I believe its 60th anniversary or 63rd anniversary or something like that. That there was a all new print of Pinocchio released, and that there was something about Pinocchio that really had an effect. Even though after it's a timeless story, I think, and of course it was Walt Disney himself behind it. And it was strange seeing it on the theater because it was. Of course, they never blew it up to widescreen, and I remember that the entire screen was not filled because it was just this square. But anyway, the technical aspects had nothing to do with the story. We still got into the story of Pinocchio, Jiminy Cricket and things like that, and of course. This is the 70th anniversary edition of Pinocchio, and this is stunning. When Disney does these platinum editions, they do a masterful job at them. I kid you not. The picture and sound is nothing but pure quality. There's a lot of stuff in here about the making of, there's games, there's activities, and talked about how Walt Disney liked to do animation back then. He had this thing called the sweat box, and it talks about it on here on the DVD, and it essentially was a sweat box. There was no air conditioning or fans in this room where they would screen the movie and improve it. And he would put them in a very uncomfortable setting while they came up with the story. And he said it would help pressure them to move right along. And we'll stop here and take another break.